Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome in to episode number 19 of our AEW 2022 save and TEW 2020. This is Dynamite for August week 2. We are building towards All Out, our pay-per-view, which will take place week 1 September. So several more Dynamite still to go, and Rampage, of course, before we get there. But this just will be a Dynamite only episode. I know we were kind of grouping them together at times. The previous, kind of iteration of the series, but this is going to be Dynamite only because we actually have a lot of sort of storyline stuff to push forward based on the big edition of Dynamite we had last time. So this will be Dynamite. We'll do a quicker sort of episode of Rampage, which will actually be a little bit more storyline driven than usual. And then we'll probably should be able to get back on track and kind of grouping them together after that. We just kind of had to jam in a lot storyline wise in these past couple episodes of Dynamite, even though they're about 8 months apart, maybe, or 7 months, something like that. Maybe closer, I don't remember, in terms of the last episode we did. So let's jump into Dynamite. This is the pre-show. Sammy Guevara gets a win over Matt Sydal here. I actually think we've had this match before, but again, it's been so long since I booked this show that I'm pretty sure we've had this on a pre-show, I want to say, at some point or another. But we have it again here, 65. Don't remember exactly what we had the last time, but Sammy, as I said, someone who will factor into storylines moving forward, but that will likely come after All Out. So let's jump in to the main edition of the card here, and we start off with the announcement that MJF, yes, the devil himself, has returned, and he is set to speak tonight on Dynamite, so really pushing the fact that MJF will be speaking on this edition of Dynamite, and really pushed as though he will be inside of the ring here on this show. So, yes, what will MJF have to say after his dramatic return, where he just started sort of going after CM Punk after that cage match between Punk and Dustin, who, as we know, made the turn against Butcher and the Blade. So, what will MJF have to say? That is the big question. 88 for this segment. All right, speaking of FTR, they are sitting in the ring watching this screen as we get to the announcement that MJF will speak later on. And just as they said on the edition of Rampage, they were calling out the Butcher and the Blade to start Dynamite. That was what they said. They would be there in the middle of the ring waiting for the Butcher and the Blade. Of course, all of this comes after it was revealed that they were attacked in the parking lot, so was Eddie Kingston. But we officially know that it was the Butcher and the Blade who attacked FTR, and we sort of now understand that they also had something to do with Eddie Kingston's attack based on being paid by MJF. And so they're sitting in the ring watching the screen. They call out Butcher and the Blade. They said, we said we'd be sitting right here. We're waiting. We're not leaving here until we get a fight with you two. And Butcher and the Blade, come on out. Like, they are ready to go. And these two get out of the ring. They, sort of start sprinting towards the ramp. And we've got a wild brawl on our hands between these two teams. And that is what leads us into a match, if you want to call it. But just think about sort of the wild sort of brawl you see. That's what this is. It's really just these four brawling all over the place, and kind of turns into a match, I guess you could say. So let's get to 58. I mean, look, they're not that over. Really, any of these four are not that over. Again, you have to keep in the context of where we were when we started the save. And so FTR, overness-wise, not that over. And, their charisma skills and that kind of stuff in the game are not that high. So we kind of have to pick and choose and understand that the ratings are not going to be, 90s or anything with FTR involved. But it is what it is. So 58 for this one. And the actual match itself, it is FTR getting sort of their revenge, if you want to call it that, on Butcher and the Blade in 8-10 when Cash pins Blade with the big rig there. Blade seen as sort of the weak link here. That surprised me a bit. I don't think Blade's the weak link necessarily of this group. So the excellent chemistry bonuses help to get a 66 here. We did book this as a wild brawl. As I said previously, if you kind of forgot, we do have to have 3 different match aims in AEW based on this, kind of product and the mod. So, yeah, we have to have 3 different match aims. So Wild Brawl, one of them, and we kind of went with that here. The fifth theme of these 4 just wanting to go at each other, and specifically FTR wanting to get their revenge on Butcher and the Blade after that attack, several weeks ago. So that is kind of how we play it up here. So FTR gets the win over the Butcher and the Blade, so maybe pushing forward here for them after they're also making their triumphant return as they did right after that cage match on Dynamite. And, of course, that led them kind of astray, which allowed MJF and Dustin to do their thing on CM Punk. So, all right, we go backstage, and it is Tony Schiavone, and he's with Chris Jericho, and Jericho is pissed. He's been pissed a lot here lately as Jericho is yelling about MJF. Now, why is Chris Jericho yelling about MJF? Well, it's because, if you remember, there was some audio released at one point or another that sort of pointed the finger at Chris Jericho being the one who was involved in the CM Punk attack, which, of course, we later revealed it to be Dustin Rhodes, who was working for MJF. But it was MJF kind of releasing the audio of Jericho and Hager talking about Punk and sort of insinuating that it was Jericho who had something to do with it, either the attack on Punk or the attack on Kingston. So Jericho's not happy with MJF because clearly MJF doesn't like Chris Jericho. We know the history there. And so perhaps that was something perhaps we'll find out later on when it comes to MJF and what he was actually doing with Jericho there. But so he's yelling about MJF, but then he starts yelling about Eddie Kingston. He says, I'm tired of having to deal with all this other stuff. I just want to get rid of Eddie Kingston. And he said, apparently the Butcher and the Blade have already done it, but even if they haven't, I'm going to challenge Eddie Kingston because I want to get rid of him now. Like he's just, Jericho's had this thing going throughout the save that he just is done with Eddie Kingston. And so he just kind of keeps pushing that he wants appreciation. So he's challenged Kingston, and Schiavone's like, Chris, come on, Eddie Kingston's not going to be ready to go for any sort of match here anytime soon after the attack that happened, a while back. That's not going to happen. And Chris says, I don't care. I just want some appreciation around here, and if I have to get it by beating Eddie Kingston, that's what I'll do. So he is fired up, is Chris Jericho. And you remember on the last edition of Dynamite, we had a State of the Jericho Appreciation Society where he basically went off on, Angelo Parker, Matt Menard, Jake Hager, and Daniel Garcia, saying he wanted to be treated like a legend and he wants more appreciation from his own society. So Jericho's been on one here lately. And so this gets a 70, and that's going to lead us into a match here. As it is going to be Jericho, Parker, and Menard getting a win over the Dark Order, Reynolds, Silver, and Cabana. This gets a 72. Good match here, and we've kind of pointed it out through the save, and as I went back and watched, I kept thinking, man, John Silver's match ratings are great. And so I kept going back through, and I'm like, every match we've had with Johnny Hungy here, 74 here for this ring. So he's the best of the group here. And he's kind of been that way with all the matches that I've seen going back and watching. We did do still the show here, so we wanted to kind of make this perhaps one that can get a high rating. Pretty good workers all involved. Now, I'm pretty sure Jericho has the declining physical ability, so that's something that knocks it a little bit. A little momentum stuff with Cabana and that kind of thing. But overall, I'm pleased with this. But the bigger story, as we said, is Jericho just wanting to be appreciated. That's all he wants. So where does that go? We'll find out. All right. Then we get a video package here. Nice rating, 69, as it looks at Wardlow training for his big match with Miro, where he'll defend the TNT title against Miro at All Out. That is official. And it is kind of a training montage here for Wardlow. So, match was immediately announced last week, and Wardlow quickly starts training, and this is kind of the video we get here, kind of looking at the history with these two, and Wardlow training for that big match against Miro. Speaking of Miro, he is in action as he gets the win over Jay Lethal here. Another match just to kind of forward the dominance of Miro right now. This gets a 62 overall for this one, so not a lot to add to this one. We did do storytelling because, again, 3 different match aims. So as you've seen, our first 3 matches, I think we've had different match aims for all, so we've covered that. In terms of the requirements needed. So Wild Brawl, Still the Show, storytelling. We fit all those in here early on. So this gets to 62 overall here for this one, and Miro building more confidence heading into that match here in several weeks for the TNT title against Wardlow. All right, then we get an official announcement that it will be Hangman Page versus Buddy Matthews next week on Dynamite, and we kind of get the history the package here between, Malachi Black, what they've done, him getting a pin on Darby Allin, him getting a pin on Sting in the 6-man tag at Fyter Fest with the House of Black wearing the Sting face paint, and then sort of saying, next up is Hangman Page. We know that Malachi's intention here is to get the AEW World Championship, and he feels like, this is kind of the path to doing that, is to start taking out all the top guys, basically, on the roster in his path. So that is kind of our setup here, but it will be Hangman Page versus Buddy Matthews set for next week on Dynamite. So 68 overall here for this one. All right, then we get a women's match here. Ruby Soho gets the win over Tai Conti. 824, the Heidi Ho does it here, so 62 overall for this one. Haven't really used either one of these very much at all, but there is a reason I stuck this match in here just to kind of, which you'll see play out. I think you'll actually see it play out as soon as Rampage, but there was a reason I kind of put this one together to give Ruby Soho a win in this one. So 62 for this match here. And then we get Kenny Omega, who has made his return as well recently. And, kind of playing up the Ultimate Elite was his sort of proposition to the Blackpool Combat Club and others. So we are in the back, and you can cut the tension with a knife here, as it is Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks kind of standing on one side, Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish on the other. We know the tension that's been there between that group. And now Omega is kind of speaking. Everyone's just kind of looking at each other, glancing back and forth. And Omega just says, look, I wanted to get you guys together because I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page here. I just want everyone to be happy. Like, let's all just get along. We know we can. We're a very talented group, and I just want to make sure, we can all get along here. And it's just, Kenny just kind of playing that up, wanting everyone to be on the same page and that they all want to get along. And we know Adam Cole's a little perturbed here. He's been, Cole hasn't been real happy here lately with the Bucks and all the stuff that he's been having to deal with, being questioned by William Regal about being a lead and all this other stuff. So Cole kind of biting his tongue here, but finally he speaks up and he just says, okay, you want everybody to get along. Well, what about the Ultimate Elite series here that I am in with you? And he goes, you talk about the G1 Climax and all this and the details. If that's the case, that means you and I are going to have to wrestle each other. So how are we all trying to get along if you want to get in the ring with me to try to beat me? And so Cole's just kind of going off here, and you can see the Bucks just sort of shaking their head. They're getting ready to get riled up to sort of defend Omega here. But then Omega just says, everyone just calm down, calm down. Adam, come on out. You're going to come out with me. We're going to talk about the details of, this whole thing here. You just come on out. We'll take care of it. Everything's okay. It's just calm down. Let's go take care of this. Let's announce the Ultimate Elite Series, what it's all about, and we'll talk more about everything else a little bit later on. So that's kind of your setup here, is Omega trying to sort of keep the peace between this group. But meanwhile, Adam Cole's not buying it, and this gets a 76 here for this one. All right, that is going to take us into going to the ring. It is Kenny Omega and Adam Cole. And Omega officially reveals the details of the Ultimate Elite Series, which was officially accepted by William Regal on behalf of the Blackpool Combat Club. And Claudio is accepted. Samoa Joe is accepted. Remember, this is still kind of that period where Claudio was not officially in the BCC yet, but we'll talk more about that as we move forward. But, so it's official. Kenny says the details are this. It will be a, sort of round-robin style tournament involving me, Kenny Omega, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, and you can see Cole just kind of shaking his head here because, as he just pointed out, that's just kind of the way it works. It's a round-robin tournament. They're going to have to fight each other. So it's going to be Danielson. It's going to be Moxley. Going to be Claudio. Going to be Samoa Joe. And Omega says, and just like I said last week, it's going to be someone else that will be at All Out to also join us in the tournament. So he kind of leaves it at that. He says it's going to be us seven in the Ultimate Elite Series. He said to finally prove who is the elite, who's the best of the best. That's what we're all here for. Who is the best of the best? And that is kind of what Kenny Omega keeps pushing here, is that this series will decide who is sort of the elite. Everyone's talked about questioning who's elite and all this other stuff. That's been what William Regal's been talking about. Well, we're going to really find out now who is the elite. And so Omega also adds that he will pick his first opponent in the series next week, and the other matchups will be revealed next week on Dynamite. So the first set of matchups will be sort of, revealed officially, and then you'll kind of see how things will play out from there in terms of the schedule. So Omega will pick his first opponent next week, and we'll find out the first matchups, which Omega says the very first matchups, set of matchups will take place at All Out. So we know that that's sort of the setup here, that these are the 7 men that will be in it. We know kind of the details. Well, this gets an 86. Here comes William Regal. And he comes out with Yuta, Danielson, and Moxley. And Regal just says, well, hold on a second, Kenny. Hang on. I made it very clear, and I'm pretty sure you made it clear that, you wanted the Blackpool Combat Club in the Elite Series, in the Ultimate Elite here. And Omega says, yeah, that's what I said. And Regal just said, well, I said on Rampage that Danielson, Moxley, and Wheeler Yuta all accepted an invite into the Ultimate Elite. We were all going to fight to prove who's the best. And Regal just says, well, what about Yuta? Where is he at? And Omega just kind of looks around and says, I never said anything about Wheeler Yuta. I said, I don't think he should be in the Ultimate Elite. He said he hasn't proved anything. He doesn't belong in there with me, with Adam Cole right here. Adam Cole's already beaten him. He couldn't beat Adam Cole. What does he belong in the Ultimate Elite for? And that's when Cole just kind of turns his head real quickly, and Omega's just like, well, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean it like that. But what has Wheeler Yuta done? And Omega just kind of keeps pushing this. And Regal is there, and you can tell Yuta's getting frustrated. Danielson and Moxley sort of holding him back here. Yuta's getting frustrated. He's starting to get angry. And Regal just says, okay. And that's, Regal just says, well, how about this? You've got your proposition. I'm gonna have another one myself here. You don't think Wheeler Yuta belongs in the Ultimate Elite? Well, how about this? Next week on Dynamite, why don't you step into the ring with Wheeler Yuta? If Wheeler wins, he's in. If he loses, he's not in. That simple. Next week, one-on-one, Kenny Omega, Wheeler Yuta. That's how it should be. And that's what Regal says, and Omega's just kind of sitting there, kind of pushing his head back and forth. You can tell he's trying to think about it. He says, okay, that works for me. Kenny Omega, Wheeler Yuta, next week. If he beats me, he can be in the Ultimate Elite. So that is your setup. That will be a big match next week on Dynamite as Kenny Omega goes one-on-one with Wheeler Yuta with a spot in the Ultimate Elite on the line for Yuta. So 78 there overall, and as I said, the details, we'll continue to get into those. We still have, like I said, we basically still have several episodes of Dynamite to get to, so don't worry. We're just going to kind of spread this out a little bit to get to the pay-per-view, which we still have a little ways to go to get there. So 78 overall for this one, but as of right now, it's a 7-man tournament. Could it be 8 if Wheeler Yuta defeats Kenny Omega? And we'll find out the opponents next week on Dynamite, the opening matches. So there you go. All right, speaking of the Blackpool Combat Club, they're going to take out some frustration here, and specifically Wheeler Yuta is going to take out some frustration because they get the win over the Factory, QT, Solo, Camarado, as it is Yuta getting the submission on QT Marshall. So Yuta kind of playing up here that he is not happy about being basically saying he hasn't proved anything by Omega, but knowing he's going to get his chance next week against Omega in the ring, Yuta comes out kind of on a tear here, and that's really what this match is about. So let's get to 76. I mean, look, Danielson 93, Moxley at 90. What else can we say? Like, these guys are just tremendous in terms of what they are doing right now. So 76 overall for this one, and again, that does set up our big match next week, Kenny Omega versus Wheeler Yuta. All right, now we go backstage. It is Tony Schiavone who is there once again. I feel like this is like a recurring theme on Dynamite. It seems like every show it is Tony Schiavone with Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, and Rebel. So Schiavone's there, and before he can even ask a question, Baker just says, "Look, Tony, you can look at our faces right now. We're not happy. Like we're all usually smiling, everything's there, but no. Everyone's buying into the tension, and it's your fault. You're the one pushing all this. You're trying to stir the pot with me and Jamie Hayter. Yes, Jamie got the pin last week on Thunder Rosa in the tag team match. Yes, we all saw it. But she said, I don't want anyone stirring the pot here. We all know I'm going to get my shot at the Women's Championship. I've been talking about wanting it back forever now. I'm going to get my chance at All Out when I take on Thunder Rosa, and I beat her for the AEW Women's Championship. But she said, we're going to be in a tag team match on Rampage, and I don't want anyone talking about stirring the pot, any of this other stuff, no matter who wins, no matter what happens. Let's just cut it all out, Schiavone. And that's when you just see, sort of Baker walk off frustrated. Rebel kind of follows behind her, and you see Jamie Hayter sort of hesitate a little bit. Then she continues to follow behind him as well. So 59 here for this one. And as she said, it will be Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter teaming up once again on Rampage. And then we get another kind of promo here for Rampage, as Christian is still waiting for Jungle Boy, who stepped up to Luchasaurus on our last edition. But, as Christian said, you might have stepped up to him, but I keep saying the only way, Jungle Boy, you're going to get to me is through Luchasaurus, and you have to decide when you're going to step up and take on the big man here. And it's just Christian kind of pushing that, feeling very secure that he has Jungle Boy kind of protecting him in that instance. So, but we do know Luchasaurus will be in action on Rampage. So that's how we continue to move forward on that. 54 for this one. All right, and then it is Team Taz coming out. Our tag team champions, Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. They're with Taz, and as they say, they want someone to step up for a title shot this week, and they said it, last week, they'd be waiting. Someone wants to step up, they can get their opportunity. Here come the Hardy Boys, Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, and Starks and Hobbs just kind of looking at it. Taz looking at it like, what are you guys doing out here? They said, we've already beaten you once. What are you doing? You think you deserve a shot at this? And, you just kind of see Starks and Hobbs like, no, we're not giving you a tag team. We've already beaten you. What do you think, we're going to put this on the line? We've already beaten you once. And so Matt just kind of runs down Ricky Starks here until finally, kind of Matt's plan, as we can hear him kind of talking back and forth, talking about what, they haven't accomplished compared to the Hardy Boys, in their history and all this other stuff. So kind of just downplaying the fact that Starks and Hobbs are the champions, that they really just can't match the Hardy Boys when it comes to tag team championships and being in those kind of matches. So eventually, Hobbs is just kind of trying to settle down Ricky Starks, but eventually Starks kind of loses his temper and said, all right, you know what? Come on, let's do it right now. Let's go. You want a shot at this? You can have it. So, Hobbs just like, come on, what are you doing, man? Like, but that's fine. Like, Starks is like, come on in. Like, it's just Ricky kind of losing his temper here. And he eventually, that's kind of, we can tell it's Matt Hardy's plan is to kind of goad him into accepting the challenge. So we do have a tag team title match set. That is going to be our main event on this show. 63 overall here for this one. So it is Team Taz, Ricky Starks, and Powerhouse Hobbs, our tag team champions, defending against the Hardy Boys. Can they beat the Hardys for a second time here? And they do. And unfortunately, it comes at the expense of a bruised eye socket for Jeff Hardy. Team Taz gets the win as Powerhouse Hobbs beats Matt Hardy here. That's kind of how we played up. So Powerhouse gets the pin on Matt Hardy. So now their second successful AEW World Tag Team title defense after beating Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland previously. So Team Taz victorious yet again. And yes, they have now, double wins now over the Hardy Boys. They beat them to get to that spot to win the titles. And now they beat them as well to retain the championship. So 2 big wins over the Hardys for Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. But again, Jeff comes out of this with a bruised eye socket. Gets a 64. Would have done better probably without the injury, although both Matt and Jeff are declining physically. So yeah, that's kind of played into it too. So, probably wasn't really a match going to get too high of a rating, but yeah, just kind of didn't really have anything going for it in terms of the injury and all that. So Team Taz gets the win, and afterwards, people checking on, let's just use that. People are checking on Jeff with the bruised eye socket and so forth. Well, I got it, Arn. I appreciate it. Afterwards, here comes FTR, and they make their way down to the ring, and they get into the ring, and now we've officially got the face-off between FTR and Team Taz, Ricky Starks, and Powerhouse Hobbs here, and that is kind of your setup with Starks and Hobbs sort of standing there with their belts, Cash, Dax, standing right beside him, sort of staring him down. And this was kind of built, as we know, it was kind of, again, if you remember back that far, or if you're just binge watching, then maybe you don't have to go too far back to remember. But it was Starks and Hobbs kind of continually sort of calling out Dax and Cash, and even offered them a title match. And then that's when, in that episode of Dynamite, we thought we were having the tag team championship match to open the show, but Cash and Dax didn't show up. It was revealed later, as we know, they had been attacked in the parking lot by the Butcher and the Blade. So that's why they didn't show up for the match. And so now they're back. They've taken down Butcher and the Blade, and FTR right back where they want to be, perhaps to accept that tag team championship match that never happened from Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs here. So that's kind of your tease for what's to come. You probably already know where we're headed here, but that is kind of your setup now for the tag team championships, it seems. 64 for this one. All right, and that is kind of your setup with FTR, kind of staring off with Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. They kind of follow him to the back, so Starks and Hobbs making their way out. FTR makes their way out of there too. And then it is time as we hear the music for the first time in a long time, because we didn't actually hear MJF's music on the last edition because he just kind of came out from nowhere and started beating down Punk. The music hits, and here comes MJF, and right beside him is Dustin Rhodes, and right beside them is a host of security guards as MJF is surrounded by a huge team of security guards here, clearly very well planned out by MJF as they make their way down to the ring. Fans not really happy. A lot of questions here. This gets an 88, and so MJF just sort of starts off saying, so, what do you want to talk about? And we know whose line that is. And MJF just kind of really starts going into it. He says, I played all of you. You all sat back and just watched as I played every single one of you. I played CM Punk. I played Chris Jericho. He says, I played FTR. I played Eddie Kingston. And he just keeps going on and on and on about, feeling really happy. And, he's pretty confident here because he's got this huge security team around him. And MJF's just going off about how he sort of, pulled one over on everybody. And he said, but you know what? Finally, AEW realized that MJF is what this is all about. And this is the AEW we all have grown to love, he says, the one with me in it. And he says, unfortunately, there's someone who's tried to ruin that. Little did I know how sort of wild this could be in terms of connecting it to what is actually going on in AEW. But MJF says, that person is CM Punk. And he says, I've sat back all these months that I've been sitting here on the sidelines. You know what I did? I sat back and I watched CM Punk. But you know what else I did? I sat back and counted my money. I counted all this money I've been getting from this paycheck from AEW every single week, and I used that. I watched Punk. I couldn't watch anymore, so I used all that money to pay for everything I needed to be able to get the opportunity I got last week to walk down that aisle, to walk into that ring, and to punch Punk in the face as many times as I possibly could. He said, I paid good money for that. I paid the Butcher and the Blade to help me take out FTR, to help me take out Eddie Kingston. And then MJF turns and says, I also found the person who could help me the most, and that is my good friend, Dustin Rhodes, right here. And Punk just kind of looks at Dustin, and you can tell Dustin just sort of, he's not really saying a lot, but MJF says, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to say anything, Dustin, because I'll say it for you. We have a very close acquaintance, me and Dustin. He's no longer here. And you know why he's no longer here? He's not here because of CM Punk, because of all the ego and everything that CM Punk has brought to AEW. That's why our close mutual acquaintance is no longer here, which we know who he's talking about. And you heard him say it himself, that this isn't the AEW that he, loved. This isn't the AEW that he knew. And he even told you people himself. He said that we were going to take care of it. He wasn't talking about him and CM Punk. He was talking about him and MJF. I know this is a very sort of long promo, guys, but this is one that we've been building since the start, and that's kind of what they're playing up here is they had this plan, they pulled it off to perfection, and that is why they are here right now to basically destroy CM Punk. And MJF says, we're going to destroy CM Punk, and we're going to save AEW. So almost like MJF acting like he is the savior of AEW here, and that is what he's really pushing in this right now. Now, before this long-winded promo from MJF can continue, what happens? Well, you probably guessed it. Eddie Kingston has officially made his return. We have not seen him since the parking lot attack, which, as we know now, was at the hands of the Butcher and the Blade. And so Eddie Kingston returns, and there's this host of security that is right around them. Kingston doesn't care. He just starts going at these different security guards. He doesn't care. MJF and Dustin Rhodes are still just kind of standing in the ring as a few of these security guards start to go down, but then they sort of swarm Eddie Kingston here. So MJF is just mocking Eddie Kingston as the security guards around them start to go after them. But then it happens. This gets an 88. Here he comes. Making his way down to the ring, we see a huge bandage on CM Punk's head because, remember, he just got busted wide open from MJF and all the punches that he took. Huge bandage on his head. Here comes CM Punk, and now he's made his way down, and Punk is swinging. He's got a chair with him, and he's swinging at these security guards, and he starts taking several of them out. So now the numbers are going down in terms of the security team that MJF has around him. And that is when eventually MJF realizes, okay, these security guards are going down pretty quick with CM Punk and Eddie Kingston. And that is when MJF and Dustin retreat sort of into the night here as we have Punk and Kingston trying to chase after them. So that is how we go off the air for this edition of Dynamite. 83 overall for this segment. So not, the best segment to end it with here, but we had quite a few good ones in that. Like I said, I know sort of a longer promo on the MJF stuff, but I really did want to make sure we tied it all together, and I know kind of having the long break between the actual reveal and the promo isn't great, but that's why I probably made it a little bit longer, just to be able to sort of kind of hit some of those points that maybe some of you guys will remember in terms of all the things we actually did on the road to get to this particular point. So 83, we finish off the show with that segment, and we get a 78 here for this edition of Dynamite. So look, it's not the 85 or 80-something I think we had on some of the recent ones, but still we increase our popularity, as I always say. It's hard to compare this to the WWE save we do because, everything there is like 80-something and above. Sometimes loses its popularity. Like, we need huge ratings. Not the case here. AEW size-wise still in the 60s, so 78 is going to increase our popularity. That's all we care about. So, pretty good edition of Dynamite here. I enjoyed kind of picking up where we left off long ago, and now we've got a little momentum heading towards our pay-per-view of All Out. So, like I said, we will do Rampage now for the next edition of the series. And so, again, we will kind of dive into Rampage, and then next time around, we should be able to sort of get back on track in terms of grouping them together. I just wanted to kind of get some of these episodes out, get back into a rhythm a little bit, as you guys would probably understand, and then we'll get back to kind of grouping them together a little bit. So that is your setup here, and as always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out everything we got going on in the WWE Save. Over 100 episodes now in that one. So if you want a long binge watch and you've never watched it before, highly recommend going through checking that out as we are on the road to WrestleMania now. So we're almost to WrestleMania there in the WWE Save, the WCW 1998 Save. You can go back and watch the old episodes. I'm doing the same thing with the WCW Save that I did with the AEW one here. Gone back, watched all the episodes to kind of get, jog my mind again on everything that was going on so I can kind of plot out everything. And so we're making progress there. And check out the Exploring the Seaverse series as well. A lot of fun in that one. But on the next edition, or on the next episode of our AEW 2022 Save, it will be Rampage for August Week 2.